Welcome back to another edition with my friend Jerry Bohnen, OK Energy today on Mitchell Talk Energy. Can I tell you, Jerry, that I'm in a state of confusion about some of the politics in the region and around the country on energy? And uh, there was a story that you've had recently on OK Energy today dealing with the price of coal and the use of coal and Oklahoma companies involved in that. And let me set it up. My confusion, set it up, and then maybe you can help me with it. So a couple of months ago, when I was doing a story about the CEO of Williams Companies down at that big get together they have in Houston every
Mhm.
year with all the movers and shakers of the industry and with oil and gas and renewables and all that. And he was bemoaning the fact he couldn't. I guess Williams has all these permits in this gigantic natural gas field in Pennsylvania, and they can't get it out. Okay, because the state of New York, and I don't know if it's locally or statewide, but anyway, there are some people who don't like burning natural gas, and so they slow it down. And the permitting process is apparently an awful thing up there, according to the Williams Company CEO. And there's this story. I look at the New York Times today, as well as OK Energy Today every day. And the story is why a huge coal plant in Bangladesh keeps running out of coal. All right. If you're going to get rid of coal fired plants, largely you're going to go to the trend has been to natural gas plants, which, correct me
Right.
if I'm wrong, they burn cleaner. It's a
Yep.
cleaner fuel, and they're running out of Indonesia. They this coal plant, they can't keep it going. The New York Times story is basically that the economics are bad now because wind and solar are getting so much more economical. And then environmentalist activists, they want to have cleaner air, obviously. So the cleanest coal in the world is Wyoming. And in Washington state, they're blocking the coal getting out. And Jakarta can't get enough coal, and the coal that they get is dirty. Completely trying to figure out what the mindset is. You you can't do wind and solar like that, right? There has to be a
Right.
bridge. Every smart person, oh, Mike Mean, Ken Wagner, Ken McQueen, you gotta have, and they're dedicated to renewables, but you can't turn these switches on, off and on. It's almost like that some people who are activists in this field are not dealing with reality. Help me understand what I'm looking at here.
I don't know if I can help you because the confusion it exists it exists worldwide. In Europe and in Germany, where they do away with all their nuclear power plants, and then they don't have enough natural gas because Putin shut them off, and so then they want to have to develop these things, and it's like no one has a real roadmap or a plan in place to effectively do this. I remember a couple of years ago interviewing then House of Representatives member Mark Wayne Mullen when he was out in California dealing with injuries suffered by his son. And he was requiring hospitalization and care and treatment there. And so he was out in California during the summertime and they were having brownouts. And how Mark Wayne Mullen always advocated all of the above. That's what we need to be doing here to be more effective and approach this uh, effort to do wind and solar with a little more sense. And instead, we just seem to be having people who just want wind and solar without any of the all of the above. And it just can't be done overnight. And I don't know if it will ever be done, although there are developments, but like you're pointing out, Wyoming has really good burning coal, cleaner than other kinds of coal. But there are developments all over the country that it's just adding to the confusion. And you were pointing out what Alan Armstrong, the CEO of Williams Companies, talked about some months ago at that convention in Houston about the permitting process in the northeast part of the state, where or of the country, where New York and a few other states up there, they don't want natural gas. but yet they continue to burn fuel oil to heat their homes in the winter. And you go, wait, natural gas is cleaner than fuel oil, isn't it?
Yeah.
So,
It's
so
crazy. So they go
it
out
is.
there
Yeah,
and you've got these trucks. This is like a scene out of the 40s. You have these trucks in Maine going up and down the streets, putting the stuff into the tanks in people's basements,
exactly.
right? Because
Yes,
they can't get the transportation. That's another issue, right? The transportation of this stuff to the people of Maine and other places. Here's your lead on this story. You already knew this, but I'm read from it. Alan Armstrong, Williams chief executive, says the soaring demand for wind and solar powered electricity will almost certainly create more need for natural gas infrastructure to prevent blackouts. Your your next line, his comments are in direct contradiction of environmentalists who want more wind and solar power projects in order to make the use of natural gas a thing of the past. Nobody's ever going to be comfortable saying, oh, we're willing to risk that for 5 days. We don't have wind or solar and we're not going to have a backup. People ain't going to like that. Okay. If you don't have a backup, you can freeze to death. I mean, I'm laughing because it just seems like sheer fantasy for these people who think, and they affect public policy, that you can flip switches. You just can't. There
right.
has to be a bridge. And I like Ken McQueen, who's got an interview coming up this week. We'll be putting out, which is basically we have to be doing all the above and
Yeah.
more.
Uh-huh. And he's right. I listened to the interview, and he was correct about it. He's bringing up the same advocacy that Mark Van Woolen made a couple of years ago. You know, you have to have all of the above on this, and maybe coal isn't the healthiest of commodities or fuel, but you still need it for some time. So it's
Yeah.
just indicative of how confusing the whole energy debate is. It is. It's and it's intriguing. It's interesting to find out what group, as I mentioned before we started recording here, how the Interior Secretary Deb Haaland, who's the former Congresswoman from New Mexico, declared a 10-mile radius around the Chaco uh, historic site of Native Americans in northwestern New Mexico. And that angered when she went home last weekend. They blocked the roads because the Navajos say when you do that, you stop the mineral development of the Native Americans who live around there and depend on some of those minerals for their livelihood. So they were all angry and almost violent about it. I mean, they prevented her from going down the road to the Chaco historic site. It's just another example of how crazy the debate is. It's just not cut and dried.
Mm-mm. No, and if you have to burn coal
Yes.
places, but yet environmentalists are blocking taking that Wyoming coal, which is arguably the cleanest in the world, getting that out of there. I
Yeah.
don't understand. It's also interesting. I read in OKNG today that speaking of New Mexico, that some groups are opposing that hydrogen hub. Now, it's not our hydrogen hub for the Oklahoma
No.
area. It's Oklahoma Project Halo, Arkansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma,
Hmm.
Halo hydrogen, Arkansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma. But this is further west. But OK
Well,
Energy Today talks about the region. It's New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming, a hydrogen hub. If you have trucks running up and down the highway burning hydrogen, that's cleaner than diesel. And environmentalists opposing this, I stay confused.
well, it's another example of the confusion that exists when it comes to the debate over energy, because they still think, or at least those environmentalists in New Mexico, that the hydrogen is not as healthy and as clean as they would like. Uh, and so they think the state is wrong, and that's in direct opposition to Governor of New Mexico, Michelle Lujan, and she supports it. And it's one of the hubs that They're asking for billions of dollars for when the Energy Department makes up its mind about whether Oklahoma is going to get one of those hubs and New Mexico and the like.
It's interesting in public policy in Oklahoma in that this governor and his two cabinet secretaries, Secretary Wagner and Secretary McQueen, have been dedicated to renewables. And, it's not that long ago we had really major players in this state trying to put the solar industry to sleep. The wind industry to sleep.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
so it's been the public policy aspect of this has been very messy, but you can see where the trends are headed, right? Solar and wind are big deals, and natural gas is a big deal, but people are just have they seem to be having trouble dealing with the reality of the transition.
True. Now Texas is, advanced leaps and bounds over Oklahoma when it comes to solar development, and in addition to wind energy. Of course, it's such a larger state too. We just don't have the solar development as much in the state of Oklahoma as wind, and it's a slow progress for the solar industry in the state. Now you get the residential development, but I'm talking about major solar farm fields like they have in southern Colorado and far west Texas. We just don't have it, and I'm not sure really why.
It's an interesting policy decision. These ladies and gentlemen in this legislature have been focusing on lots of things, just trying. They've just got this backlog of things. On this weekend on Your Vote Counts, we covered the marijuana stuff, right?
Mhm.
That's been a gigantic headache in trying to get the regulation of that. While I'm confused, help me understand a story that was in OK Energy today. We've been talking a lot about Canoo, speaking of renewables and EVs, and a funny thing happened to their stock this week. So if you can explain this to me, that may help me with my picks because their stock is going up, and we've been talking about the massive problems that they have.
Well, it didn't go up all that much, but I mean, it did. It jumped on last Thursday, 18% in one day, and I don't know why. It jumped up to 66 cents a share. It had been down to something like 55, 57, or 8 or 9 cents a share there, and I couldn't find nothing that indicated why Canoo jumped like that. Now, we have been following all of their financial problems, their cash shortages, the threats by the state of Oklahoma that they might lose millions of dollars in tax incentives from the state if they don't show more progress regarding the development of the plant in Pryor and the one in West Oklahoma City. Now, the one in Oklahoma City, I do see vehicles out there in the parking lot, so they're obviously doing some work on the plant. It's just it's just going along quietly, and we just don't hear enough from the executive leadership to indicate, okay, we're struggling, yes, but we're going to be making it. So Canoe is another one of those challenges, and we don't know what's going to happen with that company at all. It's I don't know. I'm confused over it too.
I listen. It just again, it's one of those confusing things that you can't really understand. And who knows
No.
the trust aspect of this? As you watch, I was watching an IPO uh, CEO talking about an IPO on a restaurant the other day, and I'm trying to think called Kava. Okay, and they had a blockbuster debut the other day. They used to be they're Mediterranean food, and they're going through some growing pains. Okay, and they're going to take that IPO and build restaurants. But we went by one the other day, and it's a little bit sketchy. Could use better help because all restaurants could use more help, right?
Mhm.
Talking about the labor market, but the CEO was on one of the big financial networks making his case. And I've not seen many of the executives as you have pointed out, out making the case on these. Is occasionally you'll see it in a story.
No.
They're basically obscure type stories, but it's really an interesting deal. Let me pivot while we were talking about Canoo and EVs, and I had a interesting, and I'll put up the link in the description, but I had an interesting conversation the other day with the chair of the economics department at the University of Oklahoma. And he made a really radical statement, or several actually. And it was that the majority of Oklahomans have probably already purchased their last internal combustion engine. That's the future. And it was, I think there were three things. One was AI, artificial intelligence, and the impact on people, the digital divide, and electric vehicles. Now, I'm sure that you could debate that last point, but electric vehicles are coming. And it seems like it's cooled a little bit because the Biden administration had worked during their infrastructure uh, legislation to get a lot of tax credits on EVs, and then they shrank because some of the components, too many components, were made in China. But um, people are still going to the gas pumps. And you had a story this week about where we were a year ago. Remember that pain on
Oh,
gasoline?
yeah, I know. A year ago, we were preparing for a trip out of state, and yeah, it was in I think Wyoming, and we paid $5 a gallon. But in Oklahoma, the average price a year ago was $4.67. Now we're down to about 3.21. Uh, but there still are these predictions that we might see gas prices increase because the summer driving season is here. And with all of the threats of OPEC plus nations, could we see gasoline prices go back up? And well, we can all hope not. But I think the gas prices over compared to a year ago, it was like a 31% drop. So it makes you kind of remember those days. You remember I did that,
Yeah. Yeah.
Brandon,
I do remember
had
those stickers.
yeah, all the stickers on the gas pumps. Well, he did do it. And then at the same time, remember when he sold off all the oil from the nation's strategic oil petroleum reserve, and now they're buying it back, and somehow the Biden administration lucked out and they actually made a profit on what they sold and what they're now paying to replenish that supply. Uh, so they were lucky in that regard. I would disagree with the gentleman you interviewed. I don't think people have bought their last internal combustion engine vehicle. I just don't. We are Oklahoma, and now maybe if you're in California, you might have bought your internal combustion engine vehicle, but not in Oklahoma. And there are too many challenges with the electric vehicle industry in regards to your travel capability and things of that nature. I had an article here just oh I think it was part of the fact that okay, so Biden vetoed the bill that the House and Senate did in trying to overturn the EPA emissions regulations on big trucks because they wanted to follow suit in what California is trying to do, and that is ban internal combustion engine big trucks, the trucks that bring in your products or move it out of state, and they want electric trucks. And some in the trucking industry contend it will never happen, that is, having big electric trucks, because what happens is it increases the weight, the massive batteries that are necessary to get an electric truck increases the weight of the vehicle and thus reduces the mileage capability. And maybe a side note is think of all the additional damage to the highways that will be caused by heavier trucks. I mean, there's so many aspects of that debate I don't think have been truly thought out carefully at all. I mean, okay, so a heavier truck, stopping capability has got to be reduced greatly, doesn't it? Wouldn't that make them even more dangerous on the highway than what they are now?
So the smart people I
And
talk
that's not
to,
to denigrate the trucking industry. I'm just
right?
saying, it takes time to stop a big rig going down the highway like that. And if you make it even heavier, it takes even more time.
Got a lot of law firms right now on television
Exactly.
just talking about truck accidents.
I know.
So I'm supposing, and I think that's I remember people in the work comp business years ago who would not insure long haul trucking. It's an insurance. It's really risky. So in terms of what the data, what the actuaries say
Mhm.
about trucking, and then you listen, all you got to have is look on the television and watch the law firms what they're
Oh,
focusing
yeah.
on right now. I
Oh,
can
yeah.
think of 3 or 4 right now: motorcycle and trucking. You've been hit by a big truck. There's several law firms that are doing that right now, wall to wall on TV.
Well, not just in Oklahoma, but I mean, you go to Dallas, you see the same kind of advertisements for law firms there too.
The smart folks I have been talking to say hydrogen is the long haul trucking fuel of the future, not
Mhm.
electric.
And
So
that's kind of what I'm picking up on too. Uh, I think even, Ken McQueen in your interview, didn't he say the same thing, I
yeah,
believe? Yeah.
yeah. I do want to do a tease on that, which will be out this week. For those of you who in New Mexico is a place that, like, you spend a lot of time in Colorado. We had a place in New Mexico when the kids were young, skiers, and so we love that state. Just we love New
Yeah.
Mexico. And I asked him, Ken McQueen, who is Oklahoma's Secretary of Energy, was also had the equivalency of being the Secretary of Energy in New Mexico. And I want people to know that I really did put it to I pulled my best Bohnen and I put the question to him where they're storing the spacecraft that they took down at Area 51.
I heard that.
Yes. So I want to leave that there. The right
No,
way to
I
mark it
I I
is to
heard his
tease.
response too.
Yeah. So you know the answer to that. I mean, the
Yeah.
world wants to know what went on at Area 51, and I want the world to know that I asked those questions. I did not let him off easily.
Yeah, no, you didn't.
Yeah. So, but so back for a moment to which Oklahomans love to go after the president, but especially our delegation. We're talking about taxes on gasoline and the price coming down. Senator Langford has got a he's going after something that would bring the price down even more.
Langford filed this repeal act of Biden's $10.5 billion Superfund tax, uh, which is part of the Inflation Reduction Act. And he calls it a front to slip in the Green New Deal priorities. And so he contends that Biden is simply trying to tax his way into a renewable only economy. So he's trying to repeal this act that it's a tax that we're paying on gasoline, and that's just one of the many efforts. I mean, it's like another example is Congressman Frank Lucas. They are busy dealing with energy issues almost every day on Capitol Hill. And of course, Lucas chairs the House Science and Technology Committee, and it's part of that effort. Stephanie Bice is also involved in it. Representative Josh Burkeen and Kevin Hearn in Tulsa. Uh, they're it's amazing to me the number of energy stories that come out of those congressional offices every week, and it boy, it keeps me busy, you know, passing along that information.
You brought up Congresswoman Bias. Not only is Langford doing his thing about that tax on gasoline, but she
Mhm.
jumped in the middle of the gas stove debate
Yes.
which I don't know what I'm not sure what Mary likes to cook on. Okay,
We have a
but
gas stove.
we're gas stove people too,
Yeah.
and I understand the science about what's trying to go on, but um, for serious chefs, electricity ain't going to cut it,
No, no.
right?
No, and, it wasn't but a couple of years ago when all of the Asian cooks in San Francisco and LA were up in arms as those cities attempted to ban natural gas cooking because, using their woks and their, Asian food, that's the gas cooking is much better and more easily controlled than electricity powered stoves. So, uh, Bice was one of the, I think all five members of our House voted to reject that, any effort by the Biden administration to ban gas stoves. Of course, the Democrats in the House argued, well, that's not true. There is no such effort to ban. But still, they're not taking any chances here. And Bice again called it basically, it's just another example of Biden administration trying to get in a green energy economy, and she's against it. She says we ought to have that choice. It's a freedom here.
Yeah, it's another rabbit hole like the light bulbs, which that affects elections, and so people are doing public policy. But I almost feel compelled to quote Charlton Heston, like pry my gas knob out of my hands.
or or my light bulb. I
Yeah,
I still have issues with the LED light bulbs.
as do millions of Americans
I
when you.
know, and I they always keep burning out for me. I don't know why, and they're not as bright. These aging eyes. I need a little more light.
I'm with you on that, buddy. A couple more things I wanted to ask you about.
Uh huh.
One is now that we're residents of McLean County, or as we say down here in southwestern Norman, Tornado Alley. We had another good wind the other night. Our foliage has taken a beating this year, but McLean County has become. People talk about Western Oklahoma. McLean County is part of. Is it Stack or Scoop that's down here that's just on fire in McLean
That's
County?
Scoop, the Scoop
Okay.
play. And yeah, I've been following the efforts of CPRP LLC. It's Casillas Petroleum, whatever they make the initials. And yeah, I don't know what they're up to. Six, seven, eight, nine wells that they've been reporting in McLean County, just in an area several miles south of the community of Dibble. And boy, they're just really, I mean, doing a lot of drilling activity there, and it's always good to follow that. And even this past week, even though we're seeing maybe that kind of increased oil production by that particular company, we dropped again in the number of oil and gas rigs in the state. We're down to 42. We dropped two in the past week. Kansas has more drilling rigs than Oklahoma now. Kansas has, I think, 44, and Oklahoma is 42. We're still the number, four oil producing state in the country, behind Texas, North Dakota, and New Mexico. But some of those other states with 44 rigs, of course, a lot of those are I think a lot of it's shallow wells in the eastern part of the state of Kansas, not so much in the western part of the state of Kansas. So it's something to be following carefully here because I don't know what kind of a pattern is developing. The Permian Basin in West Texas and in New Mexico, they're seeing a few declines too. I'm looking on my list here. New Mexico is down to 104 rigs. They dropped four, and Texas was constant at 347. So you kind of wonder what's happening here. Although the the pipeline industry in those two states is also going very, very strong.
It's interesting. In my McQueen interview, I believe he said, I think he told me that New Mexico is number 2 now.
Yes.
And I think that's a surprise to a lot of folks that New Mexico is that far. But so that Ken McQueen's got a pretty good track record right now. Oklahoma moving up. He was in
Well,
New Mexico.
yeah, I had a story last week regarding it came from the U.S. Energy Information Administration. It just gives you an insight into the industry here, Scott, about the number of wells and their average production. Production is expected to increase in the Permian Basin, but North Dakota, which was number 2 and now number 3, I always think it's interesting. Their rig count every week is around 3 dozen. This week it's 36 rigs, but yet they beat out Oklahoma with our 42 rigs. And that's because their oil wells in North Dakota produce so much more oil. It's just incredible. In the Williston Basin, which is it's the Bakken energy or the Bakken shale, where Harold Hamm made his billions of dollars with Continental Resources. So you you see how North Dakota, with only 3 dozen rigs, is still competing with New Mexico and its 104 rigs.
So these rigs, people don't. I don't think the media takes into account that you can do so much more once you hit one these
Yeah.
days. And do you remember? This is really going back. This is really we're old enough to go way back. So I remember. I think it was the '78 U.S. Senate primary. The senator, a great guy by the name of Gene Howard. Do you remember
Mhm.
that name?
Yes.
Senator Howard had a commercial, and take everything with a grain of salt because 1978, a long time ago. But I do believe that one of the issues was about, as the Kennedys called it, Cuba, and it was either he or Senator Stott running for U.S. Senate said if you go out at night and you put your hand to the ear, you can hear Fidel Castro laughing at us. Okay, it was some sort of foreign policy issue, right? Well, when I go out some mornings and some evenings in McLean County, when I go out and we're out in the boonies, when you go out, you can hear a new one has been spudded and they're drilling in McLean County. I mean, it's there are you can't see anything around here, but you can hear them. Okay, and so I could help you with completions. I can tell when they go quiet. I know they've
Oh,
been
yeah.
completed, right? So McLean County has become. I mean, you just to get a little farther south, down around Cole and some of those areas, there
Uh-huh.
are some big rigs working in that area.
Yeah. The same can be said of Kingfisher County. It is still, it's just a hotbed of drilling activity, particularly by Oventive, which is up around, they have so many wells produced around the city of Kingfisher. And, it's nothing to see 3 or 4 wells spud on the same pad and, 2, 3,000 barrels of oil a day. They have such a good track record. It amazes me that, one company can go out and find that kind of success, and then another company cannot do it for some reason. Because for every well the or oil company that I write about that comes in with a big production number, you still get a lot of wells that are 26 barrels a day or something of that. I don't even bother. I don't write about them.
Well,
And naturally, the headline grabbers are the big producers.
it's been an amazing time with in-laws out in Woodward. I used to take a lot of trips across through there. And it was amazing to watch in Kingfisher County what was happening in that area out there. It's kind of desolate one day, and then all these different gas plants and transfer stations. it really became a boom town,
Mhm.
a boom county in those areas.
Yeah, it did, and it still is to some extent. Canadian County, Blaine County as well. The big energy companies are still, drilling there. Although, let's face it, Devon and Continental, some of those companies are not making as much of an effort in Oklahoma as they are in North Dakota or the Permian Basin of West Texas and Southeast New Mexico. That's where their
Is,
big efforts are.
is the North Dakota governor the one, or is it the North Dakota governor decided he's going to run for
Yes,
president?
yes,
Okay,
yes, he did.
which a lot of people thought it would be Christy Nome from South Dakota, right? But
No,
the
no, no, no. She's in her second term now, and the governor of North Dakota. I find it interesting. He's got this theme every time he talks. He says, "I grew up where you took a shower at the end of the day, not the beginning of the day." So
remind me next time I'm against him early in the morning.
yeah,
Okay. It's just insane what people running for president
yeah,
say.
yeah.
All right, last question I had for you, and thank you for your time this morning.
Hmm.
Um, I was interested in this story you did about the State Supplier Expo,
Oh,
and that's an interesting story. What do people expect, and what does the state want to get out of something like this?
well, they're trying to attract business with the state. And it doesn't have to be a big business. It doesn't have to be a Next Era Energy or Canoo. Can be a small mom and pop effort. And it's a free expo that they hold. This one, I think, is October the 5th at the Oklahoma City Convention Center. And so the third year, I think they're trying to make, more of an effort on the part of the Stitt administration. He came in a businessman. That was his theme in trying to win election to be the governor of Oklahoma, kind of to bring a business leader's sense and application to the politics of state government. And so, in this case, that's what they're trying to do: increase the business with Oklahoma businesses or any other, out of state maybe a firm. You know, okay, just kind of the jump a little bit on that. I thought it was fascinating to me that the governor of Kansas landed. I've got to get the exact amount here. $257 million Walmart beef packing plant. So this ought to give you an idea of the kind of competition that's going on between Kansas and Oklahoma, and then you throw in Texas. Now we don't see that kind of competition so much in around neighboring states of Arkansas and Missouri. I don't think we do, but uh, here Kansas landed the big EV battery plant that we were in competition with. Much earlier in the year, or I guess it was last year when we lost it, and then we lost Tesla, the plant, and so they land this big, you know. Beef packing plant, and I'm wondering why didn't Oklahoma land that beef packing plant? I mean, we're right across the state line from Walmart headquarters, and I don't know.
It's a great question somebody should ask. I'm not
That's right.
sure that we'll get an answer on that one real quickly.
Oh yeah.
A final comment that before we get how do you get energy today? Okay, energy today. But I really appreciate you putting up the map. We were talking about the formations,
Uh huh.
and you had a map this week that shows all the formations in the state, which is what the petroleum geologists, I guess they named them engineers, which but it's interesting. Ken McQueen, the Secretary of Energy now, is he's a petroleum engineer. Ken Wagner before him was an attorney, and they have different styles, from their different professions. But when you hear stack and scoop, always wondered where it was. And
Hmm.
okay, Energy Today, thanks Jerry, put up those formations.
Uh
So you
huh.
can see where that's at. And
Yep.
the scoop is down in McLean County where we're at.
Yeah.
So explaining what's going on.
Exactly. And I try to keep in mind too that I think the majority of Oklahomans do not know their counties. They don't know where Major County is or Ellis County. A- And it's aside from the fact that the weather people, whenever we start getting tornadoes and storms, they go out here in this county and this county. Well, don't give me a county, give me a city. So, but I think it's important that when you start talking about oil and gas development or other energy situations, whether it's a wind farm, that you point out where these are with a map.
I just wonder how that the county, this is always kind of the early warning one on the tornadoes and stuff, is always Roger Mills County.
Yeah,
Roger Mills is always getting it first. And let's just see what the Google machine says. Roger Mills. Okay.
well, that's Sayer.
Okay. County seat is Cheyenne.
Uh huh.
That's where the Washita battle happened. And it's named for Roger Q. Mills, was an American lawyer and politician during the American Civil War. He served as an officer in the Confederate States Army.
And
Later he
today
served.
it's the home of Congressman Frank Lucas, right?
Yep. Yeah. So, anyway, that's interesting about how counties get their name. But anyway, occasionally at OK Energy Today, there'll be a map. You'll put things into perspective so we know where people are talking about. So,
That's
and
true.
I always try to put in perspective for people that want to understand this as we watch media shrink in the state and less stories about energy, almost except for present company. There's just very little reporting on energy, which is, you said it earlier. I mean, those congressional offices are cranking out work on
Oh, they are.
energy out there, and nobody seems to know about it.
Well, look at all the stories that we've covered today in this interview. You know, and they all are critical, I think, to the economy of the state of Oklahoma and to Oklahomans' lives. It's important to understand the development of solar energy and wind power and oil and gas, and at the same time to discuss, the environmental concerns that some people have. It's all part of the development. It's all part of our society, and it affects us directly more than we think.
Especially if you're interested in what your kids are going to do next and your grandkids are going to do next. I mean,
Exactly.
this impacts people's lives and far more than a car wreck or a house fire. I mean, I understand spot news, but we try to we try to get in the weeds on this. So I hope people are enjoying that. And I hope
Yeah.
you are too, Jerry Bohnen.
Yes.
How do we get OK Energy today with our coffee?
All right. Just to simply go to the website okenergytoday.com, and up in the upper right hand corner is a subscribe, and you just fill it out. It's free, doesn't cost a thing to you, and we send the newsletter every morning to you Monday through Friday. And if you don't want to wait for the newsletter, just go to the website and read the stories too. And we do not share your email.
That's important.
That
Folks.
is important.
And we are now putting up Mitchell Talks Energy with Jerry Bohnen of OK Energy Today on News 9, News on 6. You can also go to triple dub news. I just completely forgot my website. News9.com/your vote counts. And
Yeah.
our friend Ryan Welton puts up these interviews there, as well as the 9 app, the 6 app. And if you have a Roku TV like we do, they're indispensable. You can download the News 9 app and you can see these on your big screen TV, which is probably frightening to think about me and Bohnen and yet
That's right.
85
Yeah.
inches. And coming up this week, we'll have that interview with Secretary McQueen, and we will ask that question about Area 51. And hopefully we'll find out what aliens, interstellar aliens, are using to power their spacecraft.
Very good.
Okay. Thanks, Jerry. See you next week.
Yeah. See you then.